Hello everyone! Today I'm really honored to be here to give this presentation with my partner, Haosu. And the topic of our presentation is the importance of relationships, and our age group is from birth to 5 years old. So let's figure out the relationship and its implication on early childhood education. Let's get started. Well, as you can see, this is our overview of this presentation, and we're going to analyze the importance of relationship from these 5 aspects. We may have this feeling that children recognize this word from the relationships with others. It can be their parents, the peers, the teachers, and even the strangers. Before they attend the school, they tend to spend longer time with the parents. That is why they usually regard the parents as the role models, and they would copy the behaviors of the parents. But after that, when the parents send them to the kindergartens, to the child care center, they start to learn how to interact with others, with the peers at the same age with them, and how to socialize with them, how to interact with the educators, and they start to establish their own values of the life of the society at that since then. That is why we always require the preschool teachers to pay more attention to the behaviors of the children to see whether we could give them appropriate guidance and support. So what can we do to foster relationship building, and what kind of role that children play during this process? Whenever we're talking about the relationship establishment, I think it's quite necessary for all of the practitioners in the early childhood education industries to pay more attention to the strengths and advantages of each individual child, because it is easy to predict that a child might feel it's really hard to get connected with you at the beginning, and it sounds like a good idea to give a compliment to them to help them to build confidence, which can definitely narrow down the gap between the two. But apart from that, being an excellent listener is also very important for the preschool teachers, because working in the early childhood education means it always requires a lot of patience, and as the preschool teachers, we can easily lose our temper in some occasions. The small kids can usually make a lot of mistakes at all times. So in some occasions when emergencies happens, how about we calm ourselves a little bit and listen to children's opinions, as they tend to perceive the activity from a totally different perspective from us. And we also need to bear in mind that taking a strengths-based approach can also help children to gain confidence, because we need to be aware of the fact that the children might have different advantages and disadvantages. As preschool teachers, it is our duty to notice their merits and then encourage them to contribute to the group. And once gain confidence, they will be more likely to contribute, to share with others and fit into the group. But narrowing down the distances with children doesn't mean that we could share anything with them, especially when it comes to something related to our personal lives. Just keep in mind, whenever we're talking about teaching and learning partnerships, it's real easy to think about the hierarchy systems, which is also part of the reason why some children feel reluctant to come to the kindergartens. It is really, in order to establish a good relationship with children, the teachers really need to remove or get rid of these hierarchical systems away from them, and just in order to create a more comfortable and relaxing environment. Here's another question for you guys. In terms of teaching and learning partnership, what kind of role you think that children play in this process? A listener, a subordinate, or a recipient? Think about it and share opinions with others. The answer is that children actually have the capacity to interpret the rules within the word and make their own choices independently, and this kind of capacity allows them to serve as active agents for relationship building. In the next chapter, we're going to analyze different types of relationships, ranging from teachers, families, peers, and others, such as media, communities, and etc. I'm going to start from the child-teacher relationships and teacher and family relationships. As we have mentioned earlier before, the child could serve as the active agent in dealing with the various kinds of relationships. Earlier before, we have mentioned that teachers need to make efforts to create a comfortable environment just in order to make children feel more relaxed in educational settings, in order to prompt their potential. Apart from that, the teacher actually also need to actively join in the children's play to respond actively to their questions and challenge the existing ideas by asking them how things work. So in this case, the quality classroom activities would eventually lead to children's engagement, the sense of confidence, and motivation. As we have discussed before, the children's parents tend to have a more closed connections with the children. So that is why the children would feel more relaxed once they see their educators to get on good terms with the parents, with the caregivers. That is why, as the preschool teachers, we need to pay more attention to how to communicate effectively with the children's caregivers. In the last part, I'm going to leave you guys an open inquiry, since we have compared the similarity and difference between the parents and teachers. So which one do you think they're going to leave a greater impact on children's development? Think about it and share opinions with others. And in the next part, my partner Haosu gonna help you give a thorough analysis of the impact of the relationships from the peers and community.
Hi everyone, it's Haosu Chen speaking. Today, I'm gonna follow my partner Jingnan to demonstrate the second part presentation. In this part, I'm gonna explain 3 more types of relationships. We also pay more attention on the equity consideration and you guys share an evaluation. And now, let's get started. The first type I want to show you guys is called the peer socialization. As you can see on the slide, the peer groups can satisfy children's certain needs. It can also help to develop a sense of belonging. And the most important is the peer relationships can provide opportunities to practice children's skills, such as collaborative, problem-solving, pro-social, and also the physical skills. But let's consider this situation. What if the children have difficulty forging peer relationships? Normally, the extent to which children are seen to be similar to their peers also fosters social acceptance. And the children with family issues or attachment issues may have damaging effects on children's peer relations. Also, some bad outcomes may come out, such as the low risk of pro-social behavior or social anxiety. But what should we do under this situation as an educator? Anyway, the most useful and beneficial course of action is to work with children. We can teach children valuable skills to help them get along with their peers, such as see each other's points of view or listen to each other. The second type of relationship for age group 0 to 5 years old is called the learning community, which means combined the group together to share common interests and purpose. There are 2 types of learning community. The first one is called distant community and the second one is called close community. The old people often say that 2 hands are better than 1. So the effect of learning community is very clear, which can produce something greater than the ideas and thoughts of one individual. Now, let's think about how we can maximize this valuable effect of learning community. The first thing I think is to create effective learning communities and community engagement. And how we can do that? Maybe interacting and building relationships with local communities is the best way. And also connecting families to services in their local community. Okay, now in case you guys feel tired and boring, now I prepare a question for you guys to think about it, which means what kind of professional practice can be used in actual teaching? This is better than just the knowledge on the slide, so think about it. Hi, so it's back. I prepared some normal answers for this question, but as you guys know, there are much better ways and solutions to achieve this outcome. And the first example, from me is like the parents who are dentists can come and visit the daycare center to help children to teach them about hygiene. And parents who are garden can come and visit to plant trees with children. In this way, the children can build up their environmental identity. And as an educator, we can also prepare the parents for your rooms with information related to families, beliefs, and practice. The last type of relationship for age group 0 to 5 years old is the professional relationships and communities of practice. This is how we do in the actual teaching. I always said, what should educators do in the future? Maybe the first thing we can do from ourselves is called that we need to change the way we viewing the children, understand and appreciate each other's skills and the ways of viewing the world. Develop holistic learning pathways and open communication is also very essential. Let's critical thinking about this topic. How we can ensure the quality education. Maybe we cannot promote only the views of those who are most dynamic. We should enable constructive discussion, decision making, and positive criticism. And the relationships and sharing information across communities of practice and setting is very vital. There is one more thing we cannot ignore, which is the cooperation in professional relationships is very hard to achieve. Why is that? That is very simple, like people all from different cultural background or different countries, they all have their own interests and purpose. So we can work out how to fix it. Okay, let's move on to the next part, which is called equity consideration. But what's the meaning of it? Actually, in Australia, cultural diversity includes many perspectives based on many factors, such as gender, race, social class, and different cultural background. But we need to distinguish equity and equality. The equity is about the qualities of fairness and justice, which means giving as much opportunity to one child as another. As an educator, we need to plan carefully to make sure the children have the same level of opportunity to the educational resources. The last part is sharing and evaluation for you guys. After knowing all the information about relationships above, I prepared a question and a professional video for you guys. If you were asked to provide advice to a teacher who was experiencing challenges in building relationships, what would you say to help them improve their relationships with? And I also prepared some choices for you, such as children, families, communities, or work colleges and other professionals. And maybe you can find answers through this video.
In this video, we'll explore the importance of relationships in early childhood. Children learn and develop in the context of relationships. The most influential relationship a child will have in their lifetime is with their parents and family. However, there will be other relationships with their peers and educators that will also be very influential. Children also learn from observing the relationships and interactions around them. One of the most significant outcomes of having long-term relationships early in life is having good mental health and well-being.
So the first few years of a child's life are a time where there's an enormous growth in the brain, and it's growth that depends on the experiences that a child has. So when a child's environment is supportive, it's nurturing, it's accepting, it fosters learning, that environment actually helps the brain to grow in a certain way. And we know that brains are what's called use dependent. So the way you use it tends to be where the brain grows. And so, for example, if you're given lots of experiences where you're helped to manage, say, strong emotions that you have in a way where you start to make connections between thinking and feeling, that the brain grows in that way. So secure relationships where a child can predict how a relationship will be, and that really conveys to a child a sense of valuing the child and respecting the child and caring and loving the child, that kind of relationship with a parent or a carer or an educator will provide a really important foundation within the child for many aspects of their development. And the way this works is that in the early years, children's experiences in relating to others lays down maps of the way the world is. So it lays down maps about predicting how people will react. And it also lays down maps about who I am in those early years.
So I think that one of the ways that you can sometimes think about development, or this has been helpful for me, is almost as if the child's sense of self develops from the outside in. And so we learn, in a way, we learn how to care about and care for and manage ourselves through the way in which we're cared for. And so if there are people around us who are able to pick us up and comfort us when we're upset, or who feed us when we're hungry, or who are interested when we're trying to learn something new, it's almost as if that's part of the way in which we develop a sense of ourself as being someone who can manage things. You know, we learn that, yes, I'll get upset, but my experience is that then someone helps me calm down.
If we think about attachment relationships, one of the things that attachment relationships does is makes this child feel important, and it reflects onto the child that they're loved and that they are important in that person's life. So if we expand that out a little bit, then you can understand that if a child then feels included in things, they're going to feel that they're important, that they're valued, that people like them. And of course that then impacts on your sense of self, your sense of identity, your role in life. So all of those things then obviously contribute to the development of the person. And ultimately what you want is for these little people to develop into big people who feel confident, who feel happy, who can trust people, and who can go about their business.
Positive relationships are the foundation of creating a sense of community that support mental health and well-being. Relationships help people feel a sense of belonging and connectedness, and help promote respect for diversity and inclusion in an early childhood community.
In any service where you're trying to create a real sense of community, it is about relationships, about positive relationships. And those start with the adults, the educators. So educators working to develop their relationships, educator to educator, and their relationships, educators to family members, and showing respect and working together means that it strengthens that notion of community. We all connect through relationships at our service, and we want to keep building on those relationships. So it's about the doing, but it's also about articulating what you're doing and continually going back to what is happening with our relationships. Where are we up to with children's relationships? Where are we up to with adult relationships? And what do we need to enrich those further and to make them part of this community, this early childhood service?